Hello and welcome to Her Next Step, the podcast where women in the public service talk about how their passion and their intuition led them to interesting and exciting career paths. We'll hear about the fears and challenges that could have held them back and about the internal and external supports that enabled them to take their next step. I'm Lily Murphy and I'm speaking to women whose stories will, I believe, inspire you to wonder what stepping stones would help you to take your next step. Well, Sinead Fallon, I'm absolutely delighted to have this opportunity to sit here with you in Susie McCanley's studio in Sligo and to talk about your career, some of the ups and downs, and just to have an opportunity to think about or to hear the journey you've been on and some of the challenges you've faced and indeed some of the ways that you've learned to cope with that. What I really want to say for our listeners is the reason I am so looking forward to this conversation is that I don't believe I've ever met anybody as passionate about bringing about change in the health services and particularly in relation to mental health services as you. What's impressed me so much is that it was never just about the passion. When I first met you, you were all about trying to develop the skills and harness your own innate talents, and of which there were many, to ensure that you were always going to be effective in the role of bringing about change. So for that reason, I'm really looking forward to this chat today, and thank you for joining us here at Her Next Step.
Thank you very much.
So I'm going to start where I always start with the question, if somebody said to your peer group in national school and to your family, somebody here will be on the team, she will be the lead for service improvement in the HSE nationally with a focus on community services, would they have all looked around the room and said, oh, that'll be Shannaid?
Maybe.
Yeah, good.
I think a lot of people would say no to that question, but maybe, because there's a good few of us service improvement leads. We're all normal, natural, talented people who bring a lot to things. So in my school days, I was a very average student. I would have been an average person in the class, and I think this position would have been open to me. Probably what they would have found more surprising is the course of how I came to the position. Maybe the trajectory I took and the decisions that were made along that journey, and how I've got to here, as much as where I am. Mm-hmm. And where I am is a point of my journey, and I expect to not end up here. Mm-hmm. So I expect to continue on this journey and go somewhere else, wherever that may lead me. And I suppose in your introduction, what it is about journey is developing and defining my skills to get into the position I need to be in, to be able to bring what you call the passion about what I want to do to life. So maybe they would, is the answer. Maybe I don't know what I was like as a child that they would have seen me as to consider what career I would have, but I think it would have been open to something. Oh, maybe that'll be Sinead Fallon. Who knows? Maybe it will be. Maybe it'll be somebody else. Okay. Maybe she'll be a guard, or maybe she'll be a nurse, or maybe it was a very open thing.
Anything
I don't think
was
it's
possible.
So. Yeah, I don't think it was.
I suppose what is unusual is even the title, service improvement lead within the HSE. So do you want to just say a little bit about what that is, and then we'll go back to where it all began?
Yeah, it's quite a new role, and there's quite a few different types of service improvement leads across the country, and they're kind of seen as the linchpin for trying to make change happen. And so a lot of service improvement leads would bring project management skills to change programs. And that's as loose and as tight as it can be. So people work on all different types of projects across the HSE as service improvement leads. It could be in mental health, it could be in primary care, it could be in the hospital groups. It can be anywhere. But I suppose what they're trying to do is be that linchpin to make change happen using tools to do so. My role at the moment is under the department. It's a community operations nationally, where our primary target at the moment is kind of digitisation and standardisation in community operations. So I'll be working on projects where we're trying to make increase quality for staff and for service users. So to make the life of workers easier by using digital tools, and to make the lives of those who receive the service, most importantly, increase in quality. So that's kind of the project I'm on at the moment. That's a
And you said when we talked about this in advance that this probably was one of the biggest challenges for you, was taking on this role.
Yeah, it's very different. It's a very different skill set to what I was used to. My background was in mental health for many years before that, where I was in innovative and creative roles, trying to bring about change using persuasion, using service user voice, using implementing different change programs. And this one is much more about your skill set than those kind of more soft skills that I would have brought to other roles. This is like a more hard skill set type position, and so it's involved loads of learning for me, trying to upgrade my own skills in loads of areas, trying to learn about change management, project management, all of those kind of skills and tools and more harder tangible things than I've had in the past. But I suppose what I learned through coaching with you before was I have many of those skills, I just couldn't name them.
Yes.
So it's like packaging them. But in this role, yes, I've been more leaning towards those things and seeing different types of approaches to how to do work, which is fantastic because often on the ground or in operation roles where I've been in, it's reactive. You're doing things that have to be done, but you don't get time to plan maybe. You don't have huge resources. I'm not saying you have huge resources nationally either, but maybe you have more space and time and it's more appropriate for you to be allowed to consider using planning in advance and taking your time with something and clear decision making and those kind of things that we should be able to do everywhere. But often on the ground, you're on your own or loosely with a team and you're under-resourced in every way and you're reacting to things that are happening. Some awful thing happens and it's, okay, bring in a program of change or try to do things better. But you don't have the same space to think about or plan what that might be. Yeah. So in this role, you certainly do, and it's really interesting, really good from that perspective, and I am learning loads. Yeah.
And adding to your skill set, which again we'll talk about later, sounds just like an interesting and a challenging and a rewarding place to be. But bring us back, Shannaid, to, leaving school and what you thought you might want to do at that point.
When I was leaving school, what I thought I might want to do was move in with my friend. So this is my career aspiration. Like, where are my friends going? Oh, they're all going to these different colleges. Where would I like to go based on where my friends are going? Honestly, I didn't really have a direction or an interesting career or know where I was going. I was just living life and enjoying it very much at that point. And I was kind of, like I said, like an average student, like a C student. I got maybe in my leaving cert, maybe got 300 points, something like that. So all very averagey. But I remember leading up to the decision for CAO, I was putting down courses in administration, business, but I was like kind of tailoring them towards locations where my friends were. But then my father showed me an advert in the newspaper because he was a psychiatric nurse. He's retired now. And he said, this is a good choice as well. And I was like, is it? And he's like, well, it is because you get paid to do it. And I was like, that was a concern. There was 7 of us. We weren't entitled to the maintenance grant. So there was 3 ahead of me. One was in university, one was in the bank, and one was doing an apprenticeship in mechanics. And so it made sense to me to do something that I would get a payment towards.
And that was?
So it's psychiatric nursing. So it was an aptitude test and you'd go for that. So I was like, okay, sure, I'll go for the aptitude test. And I scored really highly in the aptitude test. So I was an average student and it didn't really make sense to me that I'd scored in kind of the top couple of % of this. And I was like, maybe my aptitude is suited towards this career. So that was interesting. And then I thought, but I need to kind of see a bit more of this. What is this? Like, I had never heard really the words of psychiatry. I knew what nursing was generally, but psychiatry and nursing was something kind of alien to me. So I went on a placement just voluntarily for 2 weeks to Roscommon acute unit, and I loved it.
Wow.
Yeah, it was really interesting. It was a little bit daunting. I was 18 or 19 and people were, very unwell in hospital, and I'm sure I wasn't very useful for them. But I sat with nurses and occupational therapists, and they showed me kind of the work they do and the support they were giving to people and that real human touch that they brought to their work. And I was really motivated by that. And I thought, yeah, look, I'll go toward the interview stage. I went to the interview stage and I got that. It was called psychiatric nursing at the time, so I embarked on that career. I went to the university in Galway. You did 6 weeks in college, then 6 weeks on the wards. It was before the degree program. It was previous to the honours degree program that it is now. So it was like learning on the job.
Yeah.
And it was brilliant and amazing and great friendships and wonderful colleagues, and, also really difficult to see people, when you're at that age, see people who are really struggling with some of the most awful situations in life experiences they were having, and illness and symptoms they were experiencing. But I still really enjoyed it.
Had your friends also gone to Galway? Like, did
No,
you lose all the others?
I kept a
the
couple of
social
them, but
stuff?
they all spread around the country. But I made more, so we're okay. Yeah.
So you didn't have to lose the kind of social engagement side of it.
No, I kept that up for sure.
But it was quite a different option, wasn't it? That kind of being immersed in work straight away, that apprenticeship model of learning. Did that work for you? Did you enjoy it? Did you continue?
No, I didn't continue. So it did work for me, and I actually think it's a great way of working. I actually prefer it probably than the degree program. I think I would have preferred this, because you were learning not just academically, you were learning the skills on the job, and those really important, what they call now, which I don't like the words of it, but the soft skills. You were learning from experienced nurses how to deal with situations, how to handle difficult situations, how to show compassion and empathy at really difficult times. I think it was a brilliant way to learn. But unfortunately, no, I didn't complete that. I completed 2 years of it, and I dropped out because I myself became a bit unwell. So I started experiencing symptoms myself of what they call like mental ill health, I suppose. And so I took a break. So some of these years are a bit hazy because I did go through some difficult times. I did go back for a short period afterwards. I tried to restart again, but it wasn't the right time then, and I still wasn't well enough. I still wasn't okay in myself enough. So I left nursing completely.
Gosh.
But I didn't leave mental health.
Obviously you didn't leave mental health, and that experience has really stayed with you in terms of...
It defines me.
It does define you. But also, both.
In a good way. I don't mean defines me in a negative. Like the positives from it define me, and there are loads.
Yeah, and what are those positives? Because I think it's really important what you've just said, because there are so many... we hear now so many young people are struggling with mental health issues and concerns, and I suppose when they're in the middle of it, it can be difficult for them and difficult for their families to believe that there is a way out. And so, you're a real example of somebody who found the way out.
Well, other people found me the way out as much as I found the way out. But like in the times of it, and it didn't just last for a month or 2 months, or it lasted for years. The difficulty of working through what I was experiencing and trying to find a way to be able to live the life I wanted to live with these other things, with these symptoms sometimes, or with the difficulties that life brings when you have symptoms, so societal things. So in that moment, and I couldn't speak to people who are experiencing that right now because it's not fair. It's very hard. If it's useful, good. But it's also like, I don't think I would have wanted to listen to myself. Yeah. Be like, oh, here you go. Sure. But it's probably not like my experience anyway. But for me now, it was a really useful thing that happened in my life. It changed me as a person to be a much better person, to be a much more positive person. And everybody at some stage in their life will go through things that are really difficult. Everybody will. I went through them at a certain age. I kind of sometimes I think, oh, hopefully that's just done for me now. I did my hard part and it's over. But like it builds you up and it gives you strength to face other situations, and other things never will feel as bad because you felt something that you went through something that was so difficult that you can kind of face a lot of other situations afterwards. And yes, most people will go through something at some point. So if you go through something when you're younger, it will make the rest of your life easier, to be honest.
Okay.
It makes the rest okay because you learn so much. So I learned about vulnerability. I learned about appreciation of when things are good. I learned from so many people that I was around. I learned understanding human nature, human behaviours. Like all of that was so positive. It was like that was the university of life I was in, and it was brilliant. Honestly, the lessons I learned there,
have really stood to you.
And they come into work in relationship management, in understanding positions people come from and how to navigate them. Like I had crash courses of how to do all of that in real life, personal scenarios. So. Yeah, but it's easy for me to say that it was all positive and like it wasn't all positive, but it's all stood to me and it's all good. It's not easy for somebody else to hear. When I don't think it's appropriate for them to hear when they're in it. But yeah, I found a way through it and a way out of it, and everything's brilliant now, and my life is really, really good.
Yes,
really,
I know.
really good.
You are so happy and contented.
I'm so happy and contented.
Yeah, it's lovely to see it. Obviously, that it certainly interrupted your career,
Yes.
interrupted your life at some level, and yet, as you're saying,
Hugely.
it actually helped to enhance your life in an enormous way. But in terms of your career, then what happened?
So what
next?
happened then when you're derailed from that position, and when you have, and I, unfortunately, this still exists today, but there was nothing very open to me then. So I had to, attain social welfare and disability allowance, and then you're kind of geared towards certain trajectories in your career. I was completing like fresh start courses and level 3 courses in customer relations and this kind of thing, where I'd been doing a level 8 degree, and it was a real struggle to find like what can I do that's stimulating for my mind, but it still leaves me with my entitlements and security to live. And it was so challenging. So I did some of those courses. I worked in like a gift shop. I sold Hoovers at a
Saw that on your CV. I was thinking, that's fantastic. Selling Hoovers is another university of life.
Yeah, you just try to do anything. I felt like I had fallen so far behind my peers, and I was trying to catch up, and I was trying to do things to get me back, but it never really hit. There was something not connecting for me until I was about 25 when I started youth work. So I started working in a youth information office in Roscommon, and this fitted better for me. So I was like, okay, here I'm using more of my kind of creative and innovative skills, and I'm also meeting young people who are going through some things, and I'm able to kind of use some of this experience I've had now in a positive way, and understand what they're dealing with and understand the complexities of their lives. And sometimes that's all you can do. Sometimes it's not about bringing in some great gift to the world and going, here, I've found the solution, but it's just being able to be on a level with somebody to understand why they might be acting in a certain way or behaving in a certain way, and maybe sharing your experiences with them. So I enjoyed those years, but that was no security in that job. It was temporary. That area of work wasn't well funded by the government. It was like it was a charitable non-profit, and inevitably that ended. So then I was back to, where do I go next? So I decided to go back to college. So
can I just, before you go back to college, I who was supporting you through all of this? Like it's such a big, such a formative time in your life, that those years from 18 to 25. What kept you going? I know you met health professionals and stuff. Did you have other supports?
Yeah, I had loads of sports. I'm not going to name sports because inevitably you leave out names or that. But everyone I ever met was very supportive. Like I've never met somebody that tried to not support me. But I think to delve into what that support looks like and what it means is, it's people who held hope for you when maybe you didn't have hope. With people who saw more in you or about you or for you. So that sometimes when you didn't feel like you wanted to even do anything more, there was these people that had that expectation of you. You're like, oh God, I better try and do something more. So I think in the support, and plenty of it and loads of it, but in the lesson of the support, for me personally, it was those people who still saw a lot in me and wanted me to do more and to achieve and to keep going with things.
It's a beautiful thought, actually, that notion of somebody holding hope for you when you can't hope for yourself.
Yeah.
Wonderful.
Yeah. And there was plenty of them. It was plenty of, it wasn't just one or two people, and I definitely won't start naming them, but there was colleagues that I met through work. There was friends that existed from before I had been in well, and from that came through all the time. Obviously there was my family all the time, and some close relationships with my siblings. So in some ways I'd love to name the people, because there was some really inspiring people too that really, really did a lot for me. But I just feel like I can't, because I know I'm going to leave some other people out.
Absolutely.
But I wish I could in another way. But you know what I do?
Well, I suggest that you send them a little note after we finished and tell them who they were.
I will. Yeah. And I often do.
Yeah,
and you know what? Some of them are very suitable interviewees for your podcast, because inevitably all of them were women, and all of them were women that came from values positions that also all, I think, except maybe one, work in the public service. So, very,
I'll
very
just add to my list in that case. That's fantastic.
Of people out there that are hope holders and motivators. So, yeah.
So back to college then, in Galway?
No, it was in Sligo.
Oh.
So I went back to college as a mature student studying youth and family studies. It was a University of Galway degree, but it was the first 2 years in Sligo and 1 year in Galway. So I drove up and down every day to Sligo and attended that course, and then the same in Galway for the final year. And what that course did for me was I had learned so much from life in loads of these lessons, but I had no academic framework to put them to. So it gave credibility to a lot of my notions, thoughts, ideas, and experiences by, you know, studying of sociology or politics, those kind of broader fields. Gave me a real understanding of, oh, this is real stuff. This isn't just some things in my head that make sense. These have real academic grounding in, you know, research. So that was really useful for me. I learned loads, like studied loads of diverse topics, and some suitable, some not so suitable. But I also excelled, and that was really weird for me. Again, so I said in school I was kind of the C average student, but yet when I was doing these college courses or courses that suited me, I used to excel, and I found that like obviously a real confidence booster. So I was coming out with really high results in everything I did, and I was like, what is this? What is this part of myself? But it was fantastic.
Right.
So I was like, I got undergraduate scholarships the first 2 years I did it for outstanding results. I got a first class honours degree, and that's good. I'm able to say that because good for me.
Yes.
Because I had no confidence in myself. I thought, you know, I had been very broken, and this was another kind of, isn't it another hope holder, really? You're like, if you can't see something, but this is showing something else. Oh,
and it's an objective.
Here we go. Yeah. I must keep continuing with this because I'm obviously good at this. So this is going to motivate me to continue with this and reassure me about myself and build my confidence. So that was my next step.
And did that bring some clarity then in terms of where you might actually want to work? Or
absolutely not.
Did it?
No.
Or not?
So no, I mean, I suppose in the general area. So in the general area, yes, I was seeing, okay, I'm interested in people, I'm interested in change, I'm interested in sociology of people, all that. But I still didn't have a clear route for career that's because I had no security financially. So like the Maslow's hierarchy of needs, the basic thing you need is security. So I was like, I would have taken still a job just to be secure myself and start to build a life. At this point, I feel like I'm a decade behind my peers who are now married and building houses and haven't had their times abroad and loads of exciting things. And I felt financially I was so far removed from that, and security-wise I was so far removed from that. So I didn't feel like I could choose a career either. You were just looking for opportunities that fit with your life and the complexities of your life. So what happened was after university, I saw a research master's advertised in Athlone IT. That was a paid position, and it was in humanities, so it fitted quite well. So I applied for that, and I got it. And that was paid as a researcher to look at children's rights in and through education. And that was maybe for 3 years. It was really tough. It's a master's you do on your own, so you have a supervisor, but it's a written master's from beginning to end. It's not, you're not in class.
Oh my God, the discipline it takes to do that.
Yeah, and for someone who has no discipline, that was obviously a big challenge.
The discipline and the self-motivation.
Self-motivation,
and
that trying to work with your supervisor so closely and, you know, having in that type of work, you have to have your work completely taken apart every time you do it. So you might write 2,000 words and it might become a paragraph. And to be able to accept that and go, oh, this isn't me, and this isn't because I'm no good, this is just because this is so that was a really good learning that. It was really tough, but it's really stood to me. The difficulty of that master's, and probably taken, you know, the defensiveness I might have about my work of like, oh, am I good enough stuff? You know, it was taken to task. You're like, no, that's not good enough. But it wasn't because of me. It was just, I just don't have the skills yet.
Yes.
I just don't know how to write academically to that level yet. And all of that. So that it was actually brilliant, even though it was really difficult. And I find it difficult to manage stress. So it was very stressful. So, but it was brilliant. Like now, again, everything on reflection, everything on reflection is so worthwhile. And it's annoying to hear what everyone says, but like even the difficult things are, and probably the difficult things are more.
Well, the
is
difficult things are
hard.
where you really learn, I suppose, new skill sets and ways to manage, provided you can and provided you've got some support
Yeah.
to help you with that. Oh, I'm just curious a bit as well. Did people think, I'm basing this a little bit on my own experience, when they heard you were gone to college late and now you were going off doing a master's, was there an element of, oh, this one is never going to do a real job?
I have no idea, I must ask. I think they were relieved that I was doing this though. I think they were relieved that I was doing well. I think everyone was always relieved, like, that's good, and like you're moving the right way because we know you can do something good, so we're happy that you're taking it on because I know it's a challenge. So I don't think they felt that, but I must ask. I'm sure, possibly though. Yeah, possibly. I mean, it would make sense to.
Well, the real job thing,
now
I think,
you're
can
30
often be.
and come on, you know,
what,
like
what are you really doing
when
with
is
your
your
life?
career starting? Which I'm still waiting for that. Anyway.
So that 3 years you completed it, and what was it in? What was the master's actually?
So it's a research master's in humanities in general, and the title was the Children's Rights in and Through Education. So it meant going out to secondary schools and primary schools across the Midlands and asking students about their experience of their rights in student councils and those kind of things. So it was understanding if young people and children felt they had rights and what those were, and trying to name them in a master's. So
I can absolutely see how this fits with your values, and how you've continued with that rights-based thought process in everything that you do, really, haven't you?
Well, but see, this is what coaching brings, because it's very hard for you to see that in it when you're yourself in it, but objectively, yes, now, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
So I think that's where these kind of like coaching sessions were really useful for me, because often you were just doing stuff for the doing and you didn't see that commonalities or objectively understand why you were doing something, but there was something still motivating you to do it and have the passion for it. But yes, it has carried through, and it is that exactly.
Yeah.
The rights of people and particularly vulnerable people, so.
So you finished the masters, and then what was your next step?
And my next step was I saw a peer support worker job advertised in Sligo in the mental health services. And I thought, okay, this brings together some of my academic stuff and my personal experiences so far. So maybe this would be something that I could do. So I interviewed for that and I got that, and I started as a peer support worker with the rehab and recovery team in the mental health services in Sligo Leitrim.
I'd say we might have met sometime around
Probably we
that.
start to meet soon.
Yeah,
I think we might have met soon.
Yeah.
That's about 9 years ago.
So that peer support worker's job, like what was it? What was the purpose, and what were you?
Well, at that point, peer support working in Ireland was brand new, and it didn't really have any sort of a framework around it or a very clear vision, but it was being developed. So I was a very early stage of peer support work, and so my role on the team was to work with people who use the service, to share my experiences with them and maybe model a bit of hope for them. But it mostly concretely took the form of doing social activities with people who were feeling marginalised in society. So it was one-to-one, but that started to evolve outside of that into more, people started to ask me my opinion on things. So if that's the first start of things, like how could we do things better? What does recovery look like? What is recovery for people? And really amazing professionals around me started to ask me my opinion about what should we be doing, Sinead? Like, we do things this way. Is there a better way to do it from your experience, from your knowledge and from your experience? And so I started to be consulted with in that way, and that was amazing. And fair play to those people, because it's very easy for us to think we do everything okay and we do everything right and we do everything to, and it can become very precious, our work. So when you meet people who are open to asking how they can do things better, I think it's fantastic. And that's most people who work in mental health, to be honest, because most people that work there come from values position where they want to do things well,
and where they're obviously curious still about how can we do it better. I mean, that's a fantastic question, isn't it, for any professional to ask? Yeah. And it's so important. So they started to ask those questions. So the role evolved. Then there was interviews for another variation of the role called peer support facilitators. Service Reform Fund had come in, and the head of service had set up a team to develop a big change program across all of the mental health services in the area, called CHO One at a Time. So Donegal, Sligo, Leitrim, Cavan and Monaghan,
were being tasked with funding to create change in mental health. And they very smartly employed people with lived experience across the counties and asked them to feed into consultative processes and change management programs about how to do that and what to introduce to make things better for people who use the service.
Just to interrupt you for a minute, you use the phrase lived experience, and I know it's so common when you're working in mental health services, but for other people, when you talk about people with lived experience, I mean, it's self-explanatory, but do you want to say a little bit about?
Sure. So people with lived experience are people who are family members or themselves have used mental health services themselves. So they bring their learnings from that into the mental health service to try to influence and change the things that need to be influenced and changed. So some people are employed through as peer support workers, peer educators, peer recovery education facilitators. There's a few formalised roles now. Some people come in more as volunteers and consultancy capacities, but the idea is that if you've lived it, you understand it, and you bring what you can from your learnings to try and change it to be better.
And I know that you brought quite significant changes through that project. Any one of them in particular that you want to mention?
I think the biggest role I had, although there was loads of projects, I think it's more that you bring yourself. I think it was the bringing of myself. So sometimes professionals, because it's their job, they see someone presenting as with illness and as groups of symptoms. But I think when they got to work with me, they got to see more about the other people they work with, maybe. So they got to see the people as people who have all these other things in their lives and all these other skills and competencies. I don't want to highlight any particular change program. I got a very nice email from the ECD when I left who said that these things can take so many years to really show the results. Small things happened that will influence how big things will happen. So changing one person's way of working will influence every single other person that they meet. So showing people, modelling to people what was necessary for service users to have. So things like empathy and compassion and being listened to, rather than here's a piece of education that, like, we did lots of education programs and people, learned about recovery and all sorts of things and, new skills and those things. But I think what they learned more and what will have more of an influence is how people need to be treated, want to be treated, and what works for people. What some people that work in the mental health service sometimes feel like they don't know what else to do with somebody. Like, it can be really frustrating. And for them to understand, bringing themselves to work was what they could do. Bringing their empathy, bringing themselves as people. They didn't need to learn sometimes new amazing skills and therapies or all these things, which are brilliant, by the way. But sometimes they just needed to remember that they have it within them. And if they bring themselves and try to be a little bit more vulnerable and to empathise with the person as best they can and show positive regard for the person, then they will see the change in the person and they'll make everyone's job easier and make the quality for the person better.
I really get that challenge between being the professional with your professional hat on, you trying to do the best you possibly can for somebody, and contrasting that with actually being human and vulnerable. It's quite a challenge for a professional person, and
it's almost unfair to expect it of them, but I would say it from the position of it's results for them too.
Sure.
So it inevitably will make their job easier. Like that's what you want. You don't want to make someone. So you don't want to have to them. They don't have to go in and share loads of things that happen. I don't mean that. I just mean be
willing to
yourself,
say, I don't know what to do next to help you even. Like, is there something that we can work on together, as opposed to thinking as a professional, I somehow should have all the answers here.
Oh, totally. And sit with the discomfort of not knowing, and that's okay.
Yeah.
And just not forget themselves in it. Like you can bring all your tool belt of all these resources you have as with skills and everything, but also just bring yourself. Just don't forget, because it honestly works. Like, I wouldn't say it. I'm not saying it to make things more. I wouldn't have said it to make things more difficult for anybody. And I know you're not suggesting that, but research shows rapport. That's what actually is going to work for you.
Yeah.
So,
well, truthfully, it's what works in coaching also.
There you go.
You know, it's what you're saying. It's that it's actually been able to listen and be vulnerable enough to say, I don't know all the answers here, you know, but maybe you and I together can find something. Yeah.
Isn't that it?
Yeah.
And it's hard.
Yeah. So, Sinead, like some of this, you know, it sounds like it's been an interesting career, but I'm wondering, was there fun in it? Was there lightness? Or was it, you know, did it become heavy work when you're working with mental ill?
No, because
health?
no, not at all. Actually, I don't think it ever felt heavy. No. Again, probably that's what I had experienced myself stood to me, in that it doesn't feel heavy. It's fine. Like, I understand that sometimes people can feel unwell, but that's okay. And it wasn't loads of one-to-one work. It was mostly working with senior managers, clinicians and staff. The challenge in it is more a challenge within cultures, you know, not with individuals. Within the cultures we work with can be challenging and frustrating, and that might be the challenge. But I never felt, and there was loads of fun, you know, inevitably came through my colleagues. Like, I have, the people I work with are absolutely amazing and fantastic, and I learned so much, you know, especially from people with more, you know, anyone that came from a values position, anyone that comes from a values position, and for me that's mostly been women or people with female dominated attitudes, and they are the most fun people, and they're such an inspiration to me. But I mean, we have loads of good crack.
I suppose one of those values that you're talking about was that emphasis on recovery versus the kind of more medical model of treating. Treatment and etc.
Yeah, well, recovery is clinical as well. So recovery is both. It's personal recovery and clinical recovery, and most people need both. Lots of people need both. Some people will need either or. So it's kind of rebalancing away from, you know, just focusing on symptoms. It's just focusing on the whole person as well, because you know, we don't work in isolation. Anyone with any illness doesn't work just on their symptoms. There's loads of other parts of their life that also need attention. So it's just bringing that to the fore is what recovery does. You know, it's just a word to explain that, you know, a person is more than just a group of symptoms. You know, so a person is a whole person, and if you treat the whole person, everything will get better.
Yeah.
So it works for everybody. Yeah.
So along that journey then, so here you were gone from, you know, from your early career stages and maybe the psychiatric nursing, and that having to leave that, and here you are now actually making a difference in terms of how services are delivered. What were the, I suppose, big challenges, and what were the things that supported you in all of this?
That's a really difficult question.
I know.
I think support is the people. Like, I think the support is exactly what I've just said. Having those people that come from the right position, they come from the intention of trying to make the service better and do the right things for the people that use the service. That's it. I mean, it's the most supportive thing and the most important thing every single day, and still. I don't even know where to start with challenges, because there's so plentiful, and I don't really know what to name as useful here. I think people work in the public service because you're motivated to work for people, or you should be. And in the mental health service, in the health service, it's a particularly, you know, delicate area, because you know that the people that are on the receiving end of what you do every day are people who are unfortunately sick. And in every realm of health, you know, so we work now. I work across every realm of health. It's not mental health. It's primary care. It's disability. It's old age, health and well-being. So anyone that touches their health service, unfortunately, it's hopefully for preventative care, and if not, it's for people who have illness. And you want to be in this job because you want to do something to make that better.
I remember you said to me that at your induction, which you had, was it 3 years after you joined?
One of my inductions. It wasn't my induction actually. I sat in on an induction of new staff that were coming, and I was co-inductor. The person that was there, Kieran, said very loudly and proudly, "We are public servants, and we're here to serve the public." And I was like, of course I know this, but it resonated so heavily with me that day. Of like, if that isn't your one of your first thoughts after your big list every morning of what the work you have to do, but if that is at your core of yourself, then you'll never go wrong. You know, if that's your core of yourself, and in this service that we work in, is the health service, it's even more important, or I don't know, I feel it very, very important and very strong, because God forbid you make it any worse. Like, let's try and just make it some ways better. And that's really difficult and really challenging, and usually is a lot of relationship management and a lot of radical acceptance at times. And a lot
What does radical acceptance mean?
Radical acceptance for me is when there's something that I know isn't okay, but I can do nothing about it. So I accept it, I learn from it, and I think how I might do it better when I'm able to do it better, when I'm in a position to be able to have that as part of my work so I can make it better. So sometimes we need radical acceptance because some things we just cannot do anything about. And what do? Do you get really stressed? Do you feel really negative? Do you start to, well, you can feel angry, like all the feelings are okay to have, but like, are they useful for you? And it was my good wife who taught me that lesson, of course, of radical acceptance, where it's okay that it's not okay, but it doesn't have to feel unuseful. It can still be useful, because loads of the time now I go, okay, what would I have done differently here to make it work better? Okay, so why can't I?
Okay.
And if I just can't in the role I'm in or in the position I'm in, then I move to a different role or a different position to where I can make the changes that I think need to be.
I've a real sense that that's important for you, or you've learned that about, you know, the power to change is something that you aspire to. Maybe and is that only possible once you're at more senior levels in organisations, do you think? Is it only possible to have that power?
So every single day you have the power for change, in that, again, in the health service, if you're interacting with a patient, that's the most important interaction you'll ever have. So if you're lucky enough to be a clinician, a professional that works with people every day and one-to-one, every single thing you do is change. So like, welcome that person, like, you know, using your values in how you interact with the person. I mean, you're making change every day. But the changes I've seen or noticed that need to happen more systemically or throughout the whole service, I do feel like you need to be in a more position of I hate the word power, is there a better word? A more senior position to have the opportunity to change something like that.
Is it? Well, it's authority, though.
Authority,
you know, so I mean, you know, I know
word.
we hate the word power, but actually, it is about being able to exercise power, isn't it? And somehow having that position of authority that allows you to say something needs to be done differently.
I think so. I think so. Yeah.
Sinead, we're coming close to the end, and there is just so much more. But one of the other things that has really struck me about you is that you've never shied away from personal development, from developing yourself and your skills throughout. Do you want to say anything about that in terms of, you know, how that supported you throughout your career?
And I think I really want to say something about this, because I think people feel like it's, and especially women, we feel selfish in doing this. And it's really bizarre. So trying to invest in yourself to make things better for yourself. Do you know what I mean? So I'll explain it in more detail, but I think I've met a lot of people who don't invest in themselves. So I think we don't invest enough in developing the person. So there's a lot of development that goes into, there's a lot of concentration on trainings that people can have, but there isn't as much concentration on you know, the person as an individual and the skills they might bring and how to grow those skills and how to work with the person personally on that. So I went outside of the organisation to do it. And it does happen in pockets in the organisation, by the way, and there's lots of things that people can access. But so I actually ended up in your office one day for, it was for interview preparation, actually. But during that interview preparation, I was astounded and confronted and invigorated, because you started to point out skill sets I had and techniques I was using and tools I was doing. You were explaining, but you built a business case there and you used this project management. And I was like, no, I was just doing something. And so many people operationally in the health service just do stuff. We just feel like we do stuff every day and then it's done, but we don't reflect on what skills I use to do it and you know, what skills I have and what quality I have. And I think that pause that day with you really allowed me to then start to invest a bit more in myself personally and or personal and professional skill sets I have. And I engaged with you again then to do the emotional intelligence. And again, that was an investment in myself, because you're really growing parts of yourself that are going to pay off for you professionally one part, the selfishness, I think that a lot of women have in that investment is in themselves, is that they feel like they don't deserve it, or there's other priorities that should, or they feel like I should just know this already, and it's a weakness for me to have to ask somebody else, but it's absolutely not. It's the opposite, and it only makes you so much better at your job and so much stronger and in such a better position to be able to do the things you want to do. So yeah, it's
so the
important.
program, the mental fitness program,
Yes.
you're saying allowed you both to kind of step back and evaluate your own skill set, but also step back and see a little bit more about where you want to go and how you can do that, how you can support yourself along the way.
Yes.
But also see how you might sometimes actually sabotage yourself and be getting in your own way.
Yeah. Well, that's the mental fitness program all over. But but again, it feels like, or it might feel like, a personal pursuit, but the payoff is huge professionally. So understanding yourself better makes you do your work better.
Yeah.
And that's the crux of it. And
and one of the core skills, I suppose, within the mental fitness program is actually developing empathy, but actually empathy for yourself first and foremost, because in recognition of the fact that it's very hard to empathize with others if you haven't actually learned how to empathize with yourself. Isn't that true?
Or knowing what empathy is for yourself, and recognizing that, they talk about these saboteurs in that program, and you start to see them in your work, and you start to see how they're affecting your work, and some of them seem quite positive. You're like, oh, that's a really strong saboteur, I should keep that, but actually it hasn't served you. So you start to see all these things, and you start to evolve as a person because of that, professionally, and it's certainly led me to be able to excel further, hugely. Yeah, it was a really significant. Yeah, it was.
And so that's what gave you the courage, is it? Maybe I'm
to pivot it, yes.
to move into this new role.
Yeah, absolutely, because I could see that I had come to a stagnation in my work in mental health, and I felt like I could have continued there and be very comfortable, but it wasn't personally comfortable. It wasn't enough for me. I felt like, no, I need to go now and get different skills, and I need to grow some other part of myself here, and I wasn't afraid to do it, and I was more confident in myself, and I felt more self-assured to be able to take the leap and go, let's try something not completely different, but in a different direction, and build from there again. So yeah, it certainly enabled me to do that. Yeah.
Shannaid, I really wish we could continue, because I know that there's just a mine of knowledge and passion and curiosity in you. About the future of organisations, about the future of health, etc. I'll just ask you to leave our listeners with a piece of advice. You gave a beautiful piece in the pre-questionnaire.
What was that?
I'll tell you what you said.
Tell me what
you said, be yourself, show yourself, and look after yourself.
Did I say that?
You did.
I'm very profound altogether.
Is there something else that you would want to leave the listeners with?
I think that's a very good thought to leave people with. My call to action: I would love more values-based people to consider a career in health, in whatever part of health that is, whether it's in admin, management, clinically, professionally, whatever care group you might want to go to. I really want you to consider a career there, and to be yourself when you do, and bring yourself when you do, and bring your values, because we really need you. We really need people to come from that position. I would encourage, in particular, young women to consider a career in the health service. I really would love to see it. I'd love to see them then grow up through the ranks and take over. and because I feel like female-dominated attitudes really bring the values to life in health, and it's really important. And they need to crash through the glass ceiling and transform our organisation for the better. So that's another point.
Gosh,
I'd like
there's a challenge for our listeners anyway. Well, that's fantastic.
I love it. Yeah.
Shannaid, thanks a million for being here today, and thanks for sharing both your passion and your insights and your aspirations for the future of the HSE. It's been an absolute pleasure.
And thank you so much, Lily. Thank you personally and professionally for enabling me to grow through these years. I think I probably am a very different person that sat in front of you 8 years ago, and that's certainly with loads of supports, but certainly with yours too, and with the knowledge and skills I gained through coaching. absolutely. And to you personally as a support, that's been honestly incredible. And people won't know, but you go above and beyond your professional role in that, and you offered me opportunities that you didn't need to offer me, and that weren't useful for you to offer me. And I know that, and I respect that, and I'm very grateful for that. And thank you.
If you've enjoyed today's show, do like and share the podcast. If you'd like to hear more interviews with smart, ambitious, passionate women in the public service, you can listen to us wherever you get your podcasts. We welcome positive feedback and suggestions for future guests you'd like to hear from. Meantime, goodbye from me, Lily Murphy, and all the team at Her Next Step. Remember to look for the stepping stone that will support your next step, or consider how you could be the stepping stone for somebody else.